wired into technology transformation. This is the Digital Bulletin Podcast.
Hello, listener. Thank you for tuning in to episode 7 of the Digital Bulletin Podcast. We've got something a bit different for you this month, something of a healthcare technology special, and it's about time we got some proper expertise onto the panel. So we're delighted to welcome Roland Pater. Hello, Roland.
Hi there. Hi.
Roland is the founder of Nori Health, a health tech platform and AI-powered chatbot which supports those suffering from Crohn's disease and colitis. Roland, thank you for joining us. How are you coping in these strange times that we live in at the moment?
Yeah, it is a difficult period of time. Of course, I'm trying to stay healthy both physically and mentally, and also trying to build our company remotely. So it's an interesting time.
Definitely. Now, we look forward to hearing all about Nori and how it's adapting, like everybody else, to the coronavirus pandemic. We'll also get Roland's analysis on the wider COVID-19 and sort of healthcare landscape, alongside the thoughts of regular contributor, Digital Bulletin CEO, Romilly Broad. How are you, Rom?
Hello, I'm doing really well. I'm really looking forward to this, actually, for lots of reasons, which I will explain.
Explain now or explain at some point?
All right, okay. Well, there's lots of things to talk about. There is how we go about running companies during a coronavirus, of course, especially smaller or newer companies. I think that's an interesting thing. But for me personally, this is interesting because of what Roland is doing with Nori Health and Crohn's and colitis, because I happen to be one of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people around the world who suffer with this issue. In fact, it's not just Crohn's and colitis, I suspect, and that we might want to ask Roland about this as well. But I think half of all people suffer or live with some kind of chronic, i.e. long-term illness. And what we're talking about here is some really interesting technology that can genuinely help people to live with and succeed in life despite those kind of obstacles. And it's going to be a really interesting conversation to find out how you're doing that and how indeed you're doing it right now, because it's even harder right now.
Definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll get to that after our news roundup. So to flesh out our healthcare special, we will also discuss our recent case study on Hartman Group, as well as reviewing an AI in healthcare hackathon that Rom attended pre-pandemic. But before any of that, here's some news. There's still plenty going on in the world of enterprise tech. In relation to COVID-19, we continue to see big companies making big commitments. In the last few days, both Cisco and HPE have set up billion-dollar financing initiatives to support their customers and partners through these unprecedented times. Zoom has been in the headlines this month because of security concerns that led to its appointing Facebook's former security chief as an advisor and setting up its own cybersecurity council. I don't think anything could have prepared companies like Zoom for this remote working revolution. But away from the pandemic, we've also seen Arvind Krishna get down to work as IBM's new CEO. Koch has completed its $13 billion acquisition of Infor, and T-Mobile and Sprint's mega merger in the telecom space in the United States finally got over the line. Now, as you know, you can find a full roundup of the reporting on these stories and many, many more via the bulletin on digitalbullet.in. But now we're going to open the coronavirus tap and look at the pandemic through the lens of the healthcare industry and technology, and talk about how technology is standing up to the challenge of healthcare provision during this global health emergency. But before we get stuck into that gritty topic, let's find out a bit more about our guest, Roland. It's great to have you on. Maybe you can start by introducing Nori Health and explaining what your company does, and talk a bit about the kind of technology that you guys are utilizing as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Thank you. So, so I'm the founder of Nori Health. Thank you again for having me. I've been working in digital health for some years now, doing work in, for example, sleep improvement, skin cancer detection, and mental well-being. And I started Nori Health 2 years ago based on my own experiences as a Crohn's disease patient. Which is a form of inflammatory bowel disease, the collection name for multiple diseases. And the lack of support I experienced next to medical care laid the foundation for this company. So What we do is providing a digital program for people with inflammatory bowel disease. And Nori is a conversational coach, or a chatbot, if you know a bit more about the technology, to help patients discover and maintain a physical and mental well-being. And this is done through regular chat conversations with Nori across over 100 evidence-based topics that impact quality of life, with a main focus on lifestyle behavior and mental support.
That's really interesting. And as Rom said earlier, we've got the kind of ideal scenario here, because we have Romilly, who is a sufferer with Crohn's disease. Rom,
yeah,
from your position as somebody who would benefit greatly from the kind of work that Nori Health are doing, what are your thoughts here?
I think it's great. So I've signed up too late, so I haven't actually tried it yet. But I will be. And I think one of the things that my eyes have been, and we'll talk about more about this, but one of the things that my eyes have been open to a bit recently is how AI as a generalized term, through things like chatbots, can be used in all sorts of healthcare contexts, but in particular this, which is the gap between medical interventions of one kind or another, whether that's simply an appointment with a specialist, or bigger interventions, and for Crohn's and colitis that can and often does include surgery and so on. The gaps between those, which is maybe 90% of the time, are people living with what can be a very debilitating condition. For me, fortunately, it's very, very mild, so I don't suffer on that level particularly. But for a lot of people, it is extremely difficult to live with as a condition. You're very poorly a lot of the time. And so what support exists for people in that situation to help them manage? Because there's plenty of things people can do with their lifestyle and so on that can help to improve the various outcomes from their condition. But until now, from a personal point of view, there are apps and things out there that you can play around with. None of them have I found particularly useful, but this, I think, could be really, really interesting. And I think that you've already got a track record, right, Roland, of some impressive results from people who've trialed it already. And I'd be quite interested to know in how the AI itself works and how that's growing and improving over time.
Yeah, sure. So regarding the results, first we have tested this extensively with the Patient Foundation. So we have been working closely with the Patient Foundation because our main objective is to help patients. So Nori Health was founded by patients, and it needs to add value to patients. That is the most important thing. So we have been working with the foundation, and over the past few months, we have established very positive results in terms of quality of life, and also daily management of these conditions, because it is so personal. Like you said, for you, the condition is relatively mild. For me, it's a bit worse. So I struggle with quite some symptoms, and these get worse by the day, or they get better by the day, depending on a lot of different factors. So the personalized nature of the condition is very hard to treat as well, of course. So that's why we have come to technology to solve that problem, and to make sure that we can help people at scale, but on a very personalized level. And that is where AI comes in as well, of course. So based on your personal profile that Nori builds with every conversation, she decides basically what would add the most value at this point. So whenever you start a new conversation with Nori, she decides based on that situation what you should discuss and what you could potentially try to help yourself get a bit better.
Can you give the listeners some sort of indication as to how sophisticated the kind of AI engine is that underpins your platform, and how maybe it will improve in the future as more and more people use the app?
Yeah, sure. So to put first, like technology like AI or chatbots, it's not our main objective to implement technology. Like we are using technology for a certain mission. and that is to help these patients. So whatever technology helps, we use. So we are not trying to implement the most sophisticated AI model, but we are trying to implement AI models that actually work. So we are looking very much at the personalization of the journey, and the providing of information to specific patients at a specific time. So that is the most important thing. And we do that, of course, by different algorithms that we have designed ourselves and that are optimized with every conversation. So of course, it very much helps when more patients are starting to use it. It will get better. That is the basis, of course.
Mm-hmm. So can I just to follow up on that, out of interest, you would think that there's a clinical benefit as well. So in other words, the personalized help is being provided to patients, but presumably what you end up with is an awful lot of potentially very useful data that might be helpful to researchers, clinicians, to help them understand more fully a lot of the things that are going on with their patients when they're not in the room with them. Is that something part of what you're thinking about and doing?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it is obviously our goal to become part of the care pathway and to help health systems in better understand these patients, but also to better support them and to, of course, lift the burden of healthcare workers that are overwhelmed with questions and visits and just an overall intense workload, especially during these times, of course. So yeah, that is definitely our goal.
Before we talk about these times, as you said there, Roland, obviously we're talking about coronavirus there. Do you want to just tell your personal story in a bit more detail? Because I know the motivation to create this app and to be such a strong influencer in the community that you're trying to help it's a very personal story for you, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it is my personal drive to make this happen and to help people like me. So this company is not primarily driven by making money or something like that, or to become some kind of multi-million-dollar company. But we are trying to help people, and that is because of my personal situation, of course. Like, I know how impactful this disease is, how difficult it is to live with this on a daily basis. And of course, there are many other chronic diseases that are just the same way. So a lot of invisible diseases like this. So whenever I arrive somewhere, people don't see that I'm sick, but of course, I have to struggle with every new situation. So whenever I go to dinner, for example, with friends, I have a lot of struggles going on in my mind that people don't know about. At my workplace or any other situation, this disease has a direct impact. So that is very impactful. So me personally, I was 18 when I got diagnosed. Many others are diagnosed even earlier during their teenage years, which is of course a situation where you are pretty vulnerable. So you are very much developing as a person, as an pre-adolescent, and you have a lot of problems going on, and you don't need this problem on top of that. So a lot of people deal with trauma based on that period of time. So it is very strong for me as a driver to make an impact and to use my passion for technology and for digital health specifically to really make a difference. So yeah, you can definitely say that I'm driven to make this succeed. Yeah,
it's through things like Noriap, I think, and through maybe even podcasts like this, where we actually talk about it quite openly and say, look, this is, if you want, especially relevant now, if you want healthcare services to be better able to deal with to deal with patients of whom there are more all the time, and at the same time resources continue to dwindle in a healthcare context, then it's this sort of thing, and maybe broadened out beyond that to telemedicine more generally, that will ultimately relieve that burden, but also make for much, much better outcomes for patients by getting it out in the open.
the thing that has been very surprising to us is that people are so open to Nori. So they are talking to a chatbot and not to a human being, but they share their frustrations and they are very open on a personal level. So people feel very guilty about not being able to fully support their husband or wife in the household or taking care of children or stuff like that. So it goes much further than practical problems. And these are things that you cannot discuss every day with your partner as well. Like I see that for myself as well. I don't want to discuss these things every day with my wife because this is for me a very big issue, but I don't want to put that burden on her. And this is where Nori helps. And that was for us a big surprise as well. But you see that the compassionate nature of Nori really helps to bond with patients and to really offer a understanding ear, basically, to their issues. So
that's really interesting, and your cause is a very noble one, Roland. And we wish you the best in the future in supporting and hope as many people, as many sufferers, get the support through Nori that they can.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No, they're fantastic. So let's sort of widen the conversation and talk about coronavirus. First of all, Roland, how has Nori been affected by coronavirus as a business?
Yeah, it's mainly a practical change, of course. So everybody is working remotely. So that is difficult because we, of course, have a small team and we have to work very dynamically and all the time, and now even more. So yeah, it has been challenging. Some projects that we are working on have been postponed. Others are being fast-tracked because the need from patients has grown. So from my personal experience as well, like the current situation is very hard, of course. I think for healthy people, it's also hard. The staying at home situation is difficult. It puts strains on what people can do, how they can work. They have to take care of children, etc. But for people with this kind of condition that are considered high risk, they are facing months of isolation. So yeah, it's a very different perspective for me personally as well, which changes the way I work, I guess too. But I'm trying to do the best I can.
Yeah, absolutely. Rom, where do you think technology has had its biggest impact in fighting the pandemic, and where will it have its biggest impact, do you think?
Actually, things like Nori and the efforts of people like Roland are probably, I think, going to be the sorts of innovations that emerge from this crisis with a new sense of importance in terms of how other people regard them. Because for all the reasons that Roland was just saying, these things are more important now than they ever have been, because people who suffer silently all of the time anyway are suffering doubly right now. And the availability of technologies and innovations to be able to tackle that in the places where those people are in real time are going to be really, really important. And hopefully that will come out of this with a new sense of energy and hopefully investment and so on. In terms of like the right now, obviously we're all reading all of the time about how people and governments, institutions all around the world are trying to deal with the outbreak, and we try to certainly in terms of what we do at Digital Bulletin, we're trying to peel some of those layers off and understand what technologies are coming to the fore. And truthfully, beyond things like remote working tools and video conferencing, in terms of technologies that have been immediately deployed in order to solve the problem, it's hard to see anything yet. I think in the future, when we get to wave 2 and wave 3 of COVID-19, we will see, I think, a lot more interesting things, particularly in terms of AI and how that might help in creating perhaps a better response to the problem. But right now, and
in the creation of a vaccine, which is obviously a very much a long-term project as well. But a lot of big tech have certainly put themselves into that sort of position where they want to be seen to be helping wherever they can. Did you see the story about? And again, this is something which isn't an immediate help, but the NHS, so the National Health Service here in the UK, is working alongside the likes of, say, all the big names, Microsoft, AWS, Google, and they are basically collaborating in sort of an unprecedented fashion to develop a data platform that will inform kind of the response here to the coronavirus. It's those kind of big projects which do take a bit longer, where the tech companies are going to come into play. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think again, that's essentially I think true to what I was just saying, which is I think those things will take a while to bring about. And when you're ingesting vast amounts of data, and if you're then applying advanced analytics or AI type applications to that data, it takes time. You have to spend a good amount of time making sure that you're getting the right kind of data, that it's cleansed, that you can then do things with it. It's going to be hopefully mature and much more applicable and useful down the line a little way, in the same way that a vaccine is down the line a bit away. I think, right now, obviously, what we've seen is a dramatic response to an immediate threat with the virus. And most of the technologies that have been most useful straight away have been to do with how people can continue to work and live from home using digital technologies, but also in terms of how those technologies have helped people, in particular the healthcare industry, to continue doing what they do. We don't read much about it, but there are a lot of people in the healthcare industry who aren't dealing with coronavirus right now. They're doing all of the other things that the healthcare industry always needs to do anyway. And a lot of them need to be doing it from home. And so you read stories about telemedicine and how lots of, much more run-of-the-mill kind of everyday sorts of clinical activities are going on remotely via video, via cameras, via whatever. Some of these stories are interesting in that they're jury-rigged, cobbled together kind of devices. I think was it Singapore or somewhere in that part of the world where the doctors had created a robot that could shuffle itself around with an iPad in order to meet people. And these things are the innovation under pressure, as it were, where is actually, when that's when most innovation happens, really, is when you have an absolute need. Those kind of responses, I think, are the ones that are really the story of this whole experience. Later, we will see the bigger advances that come about from this. That's my own view.
Roland,
what you think, Roland?
No, I was going to say, Roland, do you think the coronavirus will have a lasting impact on how healthcare is provided in the future, with sort of technology at the center of that? Ron mentioned sort of telehealth, virtual care. You guys are kind of in that space as well, where you're using technology to interact with a patient or a sufferer. Do you think things will change sort of for good after this?
Definitely, yeah. I think from the perspective of digital health, I think this could be the big point of change. So you have seen, of course, a very clear distinction between traditional care and digital care, and I think that will change after this. So I think it will blend together to just become healthcare. So we are not talking about digital healthcare anymore, but just healthcare, and I think that will come out of this. I think that we now see the need for these additional tools, not just for communication, but also for support, for vaccine development, like you said. So when you look at the speed that we are working on right now, like without digital tools, like this cannot have happened at all. One thing that is probably also very much coming out of this is the personal support for people with a infection, not coming into the hospital but are sick at home. Here in the Netherlands, we have an application that is provided through hospitals for people that actually are infected, but they don't have to go to the hospital. But of course, these people are very anxious. They don't understand certain symptoms, or so they have a direct connection with doctors and nurses in order to ask questions and to help them. So these kind of tools, of course, never existed, specifically in the situation that we now have. And also apps for tracing, for example. So I know several countries are looking for like a national application in terms of tracing patients and the people they have been in touch with, which of course sparks a lot of discussions about privacy as well. But I think all these things will contribute to a completely new healthcare environment.
I tell you what, just a side thought, this may sound a bit silly, but I think one of the most important technologies during this crisis hasn't been a healthcare technology at all. It's been Netflix, and it's been OTT streaming platforms, that sort of stuff. If you imagine that this pandemic had occurred 5-10 years ago, when those sorts of things simply weren't available, and most people were still dialing up to the internet or whatever it was.
Yeah, and you'd have to go down to Blockbusters and buy
right.
or rent a VHS, which you wouldn't obviously be able to do.
Right, and so, and then you asked everybody, billions of people to stay in their houses for weeks. How likely is it that would have been effective without the sort of things that we're now able to do to keep ourselves entertained and so on? I actually think that's been critical to the effectiveness of the lockdown itself. I mean, I can't imagine Blockbuster Video would have been a primary transmission vector if this had happened. Do you know what I mean? That and grocery stores. It would be great to see some sort of analysis of that. I'm not sure how you would analyze it, but I'm convinced that that the general availability of connectivity, firstly, and services such as that have been very important.
Of course, it's a matter of perspective. I think if we didn't have those solutions in place, like we wouldn't know better, of course. So then we would probably fill our times with making drawings or looking at flowers in the garden or whatever. So maybe 20 years from now, when there's a different pandemic and we all live in like a VR world, we would probably say like, what if we didn't have this VR world? Like what have we done? Back then? So it's probably very difficult to say, but of course it very much helps to keep people entertained. Yeah, definitely.
Really, really good chat, guys. I think it's important that we move on now. I think for me, I mean, the next thing to look out for, really, and the role technology plays in this is when we come out of lockdown, and at what point our authorities decide that we do that, and whether that is a sort of data-led decision. Obviously, it's such a critical decision to avoid another surge in coronavirus cases. So yeah, interesting to see how this develops from a technological point of view, and obviously from a health point of view. Up next, we are going to stay in the healthcare world and revisit our Digital Bulletin case study on German healthcare giant Hartmann Group, coming your way after this.
Find us as Digital Bulletin on LinkedIn, Facebook and Instagram, and at Digi_Bulletin on Twitter.
At the end of last year, back when travelling and meeting people wasn't a distant dream, we at Digital Bulletin hopped on a plane and flew to Heidenheim in Germany. It was there where we met Sinanadin Omahodic, CIO for Hartmann Group, a healthcare company which makes products primarily in disinfection, incontinence and wound management. Now, we're going to hear from Sinanadin shortly, but first up, Rom, we should probably talk about the long history of Hartmann Group and its founder, Paul Hartmann. It's a company that has been really at the cutting edge of healthcare innovation for some time.
Well, yeah, I mean, Paul Hartmann, the dude in Germany,
as he was known in the mid 1800s.
Yeah. In German, I'm not sure. Der Dude. I don't know. He effectively, in a roundabout way, through partnerships with others, invented an industrialized version of the sterilized bandage, and which sounds quite simple, but you know, the technology or the theory was invented by others, but he's the guy that turned it into a reality, and in doing so saved countless millions of lives. I mean, it really is that simple, and they've been doing the same thing ever since, and they do it on a big scale. We went to see them in Heidenheim in Germany, and as far as I could tell, they basically own the town. I mean, half of the town is essentially their campus. The road that the address that we went to was, I think, Paul Hartmann Strasse, wasn't it? I think something like that. So, but what was inspirational about it? We went there to meet Sinanadin Omohodic, who's the CIO, to learn about how they're taking actually what is a very old company doing kind of the same thing. I mean, they're innovating their products to make them better all the time, obviously, but it's kind of the same thing they've always done. To answer questions about how they can leverage digital and technology to change how they operate, to make themselves better, but to also ultimately benefit patients more.
The thing that stood out to me when we went there was this word innovation. And actually, a lot of people don't really like the word innovation because they feel it's a bit, a bit fake and a bit of a buzzword. But actually, Sinanadin was very much into it, and you could tell that genuinely this was a company who was very proud of the innovations that it has made over the course of its history. You walked through into the main lobby of the building, and you've got a stone sort of statue of Paul Hartman right there, and you've got like timelines on the wall of everything that the company has achieved over the last 150 years. And I think for me, I mean, this is genuine innovation, like saving lives, genuine innovations. Now, that's certainly a type of innovation that we can all get behind. And in this next clip, we're going to hear from Sinanadin talking about what innovation means to Hartman Group today in the 21st century.
Innovation is key in the era of digitalization. So what we see in the last 10-20 years is a huge change on the business, but also in the society, how technology impacts our lives. And this is a time where many companies, organizations, units in the organization, support functions, almost everybody, every function in organizations like Hartman get impacted through technologies. So it's a very important in this time of change to be very innovative and to be the front runner. Innovation is a very key element in the IT strategy because we see as one of the key enablers helping the business to adopt, but as well enhance utilizing technologies.
Now, obviously, this is a technology story, but Rom, certainly when we were there and reading the article and watching the videos, you get the sense from everybody that the people who work for Hartman are buying into this purpose of going further for health. And it really is, just as Roland was saying about Nori Health and having that focus on patients and support, it really is a much larger scale at Hartman Group that focus is the same, isn't it, on healthcare? Yeah,
absolutely. And there's always, what they're trying to do and what they have done is engineer a fairly seismic transformation in how they run their IT infrastructure and so on, supported by a lot of able partners like SAP and Siemens, who we met. But there's always two sides to that story. One is let's build a strategy and let's look at the technologies and let's develop those and roll them out. The other side is the fleshy, awkward, emotional, human side of it. And what Sinanadin demonstrated, as well as the leadership team that he had around him, was that they've been able to really foster a unified culture of embracing the change that they want to bring about. And that's far harder to do than it sounds. That's always the main problem that people have when they go on these kind of journeys. As far as we can tell, reporting on things from the outside is that it's rarely the technologies that cause problems. It's normally how people adopt and use them. And if you don't do both of those things simultaneously, then it tends to falter and fail ultimately. So it was inspiring to go to Hartman and understand that they, from root to branch, from top to bottom, as a company, they are completely on board and clear about what it is that they're trying to do. And there's lessons to be learned there, I think, for lots of larger organizations.
Absolutely. A key achievement for Omohodic has been to shape his IT team in a way that helps Hartman stay ahead in the rapidly developing world of advanced technologies. Next, we have a clip from Alexandra Fibbitz, who is one of Hartman's, quotes, technology leaders within the IT function. Here, Alexandra gives us some extra insights into her role.
IT, in order to adapt to the change that is happening outside, is also evolving, and we were, a few years ago, establishing a new role concept with 3 specific roles: technology leader market, technology leader scout, and technology leader processes. And this is something that is very, very unique for Hartmann as well. So our technology leader markets are responsible to really understand the customer side, going out to the market, seeing what is happening out there, and understanding what the wishes, what the experiences from our customers are, and bring them into Hartmann again to really find solutions that are customized and customer-centric. The technology leader scouts are responsible to screen new technologies, to see what technologies are outside that can be adapted to the Hartmann world, and in order to find really new business models, data-driven business models, from a technology perspective, that are really helping to going the way into the digital transformation journey. And the third part is our technology leader process perspective, or the role of our technology leader processes, who are responsible for our internal efficiency.
So some nice insights there from Alexandra on the sort of setup of that IT team and these key technology leader roles that link sort of the core IT teams to the wider business. That structure really it will be being tested right now in this pandemic, won't it? And actually, you'd like to think that having people who have been almost stepping out of the day-to-day business and looking at innovative and different technologies that could help, hopefully Hartmann are sort of seeing the benefits of that now.
Yeah, you'd think. I mean, the real value of that is probably showing itself right now. The pressure is on to find innovative solutions to very big problems, and certainly from Hartmann's perspective as a manufacturer, their problems are probably largely supply chain ones. They are distribution ones. They are, how do they ramp up the scale of what they're doing? People like Alexandra, of course, are sitting in the middle of that, tasked specifically with finding solutions to problems, and so she's probably quite busy right now.
Yeah.
And in the end, Hartmann, I'm sure, will be able to look at this period of time, obviously as a very challenging one, and understand how well their new systems have responded to that, and imagine how well they may have performed before they had carried out some of this transformation work. And I think Hartmann's lucky in that sense. They've already gone through a lot of transformation processes. They've already done a lot of this work. They've already implemented a lot of the technologies that will enable them to do some of these things. Other organizations, obviously, are not going to be as lucky. They're further behind on this journey, and what they're trying to do now is those things. And so there's some interesting reading I've been doing around the sort of search terms that people are using at the moment to try to understand suddenly how to find out what the right technologies are, to everything from allowing people to work from home through to much more serious applications like ERP and so on, to help them very, very quickly transform in a digital sense. And so there will be winners and losers from this. I'm fairly sure Hartmann will be one of the winners.
Yeah. Now, if you're interested, listener, in learning more about Hartmann Group and the work it's doing, we have some videos and a feature-length article over on digitalbullet.in. But now it's time to move on to our final topic, which is about AI specifically in healthcare. So we'll dive in after this very short interlude. Don't go away, listener.
Power up your day with the Bulletin Brief, the latest news, insights and opinion delivered straight to your inbox. Subscribe now at digitalbullet.in.
Without wanting to repeatedly remind you all about how things used to be, we're now going to look back at an event that Digital Bulletin went along to earlier this year. Specifically, this was a hackathon organised by Microsoft's healthcare arm, alongside ICS AI and UI-Centric, two small but genuinely fascinating startups at the coalface when it comes to AI applications in medicine. Rom, you're at the event. What went down inside the brilliantly named Microsoft Reactor? It's a great name, that, isn't it, for what is essentially just a room with some chairs in.
Yeah, essentially that's what it is. Microsoft has a number of these reactor facilities around the world. As far as I know, they are incubation spaces, if you like. It's a place for them to organize events, tackle particular challenges and topics around technologies, particularly with startups and so on, where In the end, of course, what Microsoft is actually trying to do is to show people all of its wonderful tools and say, look at all the amazing things you could do with them. And in this particular case, it was an event focused on how AI and chatbots, in fact, specifically can be used in a healthcare context. So Roland might have enjoyed this event. It was, it had a lot of people there. It was co-hosted by ICSAI over here and UI-Centric, along with Microsoft. And most of the people that were there in attendance were actually from NHS trusts, so technology leadership type individuals from trusts around the UK. And they sat there all day and thought, what are the things that we could apply chatbot specifically to in a healthcare context? And what was quite interesting that emerged from that was perhaps lay people like us would think, well, we automatically assume that AI is going to benefit hospitals and things like that. Clinically, we think, well, you know, their AI should be really good at looking at lots of X-rays and being better at diagnosing potential problems than humans and things like that. But that's actually, I now know, quite naive in terms of the way of thinking about these things. Almost all of the results from this hackathon were to do with how you run a hospital. It wasn't to do with clinical stuff at all. It was to do with the enormous operational overheads in any hospital, where the administration is the one thing that draws so much time from human beings away from perhaps doing things that are more valuable, i.e. spending time with patients. And whether it's paperwork, whether it's ordering things, whether it's shuffling things around, all sorts of different areas. And so lots of these people came up with quite simple chatbot solutions, which would enable processes in a hospital to be made simpler by tying in one or two or more systems through a conversational interface and getting to the end result. It might be ordering prescriptions, for example, or checking on medical records, or however it might be. I think the challenge, of course, is always, certainly in this country anyway, integration, because the conversational interface is only as good as the things it interfaces with. And we've got, I know in this country, certainly we've got a very fragmented patchwork of healthcare tools and systems and technologies all over the country. That's a product of, you know, the history of the way this stuff has been commissioned and deployed around the UK. It's a nationalized system, but the systems are not uniform or coherent. They're different wherever you go. And so finding solutions to that, the integration of those things is key. But you would imagine that an AI interface over the top, conversational interface over the top, is in the end going to be a really good way of masking that kind of crazy jigsaw of stuff, so that in the end you present people that need a clear, sensible way of interacting with these various systems. One way of doing it, and that's through a conversation with a bot. And the potential is huge, I think.
Yeah, I think the key word you said there, Rom, is simple. Actually, my main takeaway from this whole thing was that I don't think it's really sort of known how, not cheap, but certainly not these things don't necessarily have to cost a huge amount of money, and they don't necessarily have to take ages and ages to install or integrate. And actually, you can make gains in efficiency quite quickly with AI tools. Obviously, AI has quite a bad reputation generally to across the board, but actually those of us who look into it more know that these tools are actually deployable quite quickly. And Roland, I want to bring you in here, because obviously this is kind of your area as well. Do you think that's true? Do you think that there needs to be more messaging around how actually, look, chatbots, AI, certain solutions in this area can be used quite easily?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I also definitely recognize the issue with all the different platforms and technical solutions that have been implemented at hospitals or trusts. Here in the Netherlands, it's the same thing. So that doesn't help. That's why we decided as well to work as a standalone platform, so that we don't have the whole implementation process, especially during pilots. So this is something that we need to overcome in order to deploy things quickly, because I definitely believe that a lot of these solutions can help. So not just for clinical practice, but also like Ron mentioned, in a very practical way. So think about triage, for example, providing guidelines or patient information, especially during times like these, but also during more normalized times. And of course, the whole personalization of treatment, both in and out of the hospital. So it could really help healthcare workers as well to have very efficient conversations with patients when they come into the hospital, because they come prepared. So AI can really help to offer personalization there. So yeah.
What about chatbots specifically, Roland? Because we know that there are some bad chatbots out there and people have bad experiences with chatbots, but what role do you think chatbots have in the sort of future of healthcare provision?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think the problem has been that we considered chatbots as a competitor for human interaction. So it is, of course, very hard to make a digital copy of human interaction. That is well, the biggest minds alive have tried that, and it doesn't really work. So that's why with Nori as well, we have turned that around. So we are not opening this platform for people to ask anything they want, but we put the chatbot in the lead, basically. So the chatbot leads you through all the different topics and information that could add value to you. And of course, you could respond and you can have a conversation, but it is the other way around. So I think we need to set a new standard when it comes to chatbots, that we don't want to mimic human level of interaction, but we look at the value that it can bring and the outcomes that it can change, and design it for that reason. So it could really help, like I said, with providing information, with triage, with digital therapeutics, of course, guiding patients in medication trials, supporting vulnerable groups of patients. So there are many different implementations possible.
Yeah, I think you can clearly see like the potential of this, especially if you duplicate that model that you've spoken about that you use with Nori, where it's led by the chatbot. You can certainly see that being used in many different areas of healthcare. But you can also see the challenges, can't you, in healthcare, where often the communication and the information being exchanged is so important that it's accurate, and that any kind of interaction is useful as well to the person using it. On a more general point, I mean, Martin Neal, who was interviewed for this piece, who's the CEO of ICS AI, he made a point that the healthcare industry as a whole has been behind the curve historically when it comes to sort of these kind of innovations and integrating technology. Why do you guys think that is?
I'm not sure, but I think it is mostly because of the sensitive nature, of course, of the audience that you are working with. So you are working in many cases with a matter of life or death, which makes it very hard to just randomly implement new solutions. So there, of course, is a very logical, strict selection based on clinical evidence, on risk analysis, on things like that. So I think that is why you see that it takes more time, that processes are longer, and that people are just a bit anxious when it comes to implementing tools that they do not know or that are new. So you see that it takes more time than in other sectors where you could show a better overview of these risks involved and the cost that can be saved, for example. So when you're looking at a health system and the implementation of digital health tools, you will probably need years of data and research in order to show what the impact is on a specific group of patients. And that is, of course, very much different than looking at the retail sector, for example, where you can show very direct impact and a clear return on investment as well, for example.
Now, Roland, this event was a hackathon, and obviously where a group of very clever people get together and try and build out tools and solutions in the space of an afternoon. Are you a believer in that type of development to sort of fast track things? Is that something you guys have deployed at all at Nori?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think those kind of events spark a lot of great ideas to work with. So I don't think you can build a sustainable company, of course, within such a short amount of time. But of course, when you bring people like that together, it's very inspirational, and a lot of great concepts come out of it. So I've been involved in a few myself as well, and yeah, it's a great way to get things started. Of course, the follow-up is the most important thing. So what you see from a lot of those concepts is that it just dies down afterwards, and that, of course, is a pity. So hopefully these guys will continue to work on it and to bring it into a more serious level.
Yeah. Now, I know there were some really cool ideas, certainly, that came out of the Azure Health Hack, to give it its official title. Now, there's an article on that hackathon in the latest edition of the Digital Bulletin magazine, issue number 15. Now, it's time for us to wrap up this podcast, but let me cheekily extend this plug. Issue 15 is well worth a read, featuring a brace of case studies from Innovation Group and Norfolk County Council. And quite frankly, listener, if you've got this far, then I'd like to think our wider family of podcasts will be of interest to you. There's Fragmented Reality, our series where we bust the buzzwords in enterprise tech, and we also release our best long read articles in audio form alongside this, our flagship monthly Digital Bulletin podcast. Now, I want to say a big thank you to Roland Pater for coming on. What's next on your work from home agenda, Roland?
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm just diving back into our daily business. So a lot of emails to be handled and projects to be taken on. So I'm just trying to get this to patients, basically. So we are talking to a lot of hospitals all over Europe to get this to their patients for free. So that is basically our current mission, trying to get this to a lot of people. So.
Good luck. Full of admiration for the work that you guys are doing, and hopefully, yeah, as I said earlier, you can continue to support sufferers of Crohn's disease and colitis. As usual, Romilly, thank you for your input.
No problem at all. It's been extra special today, Roland. Thank you very much for that. And you certainly have all of my best wishes and continued support, however we can provide that. So very good luck.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
And thank you to you, listener. Make sure you stay safe. We'll be back soon. Until then, goodbye.
That was the Digital Bulletin podcast, brought to you by Bulletin Media. Listen and subscribe to a range of podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Stitcher. Plug into digitalbullets.in for news, features and case studies on the very latest in enterprise technology and digital transformation.